Wake up every morning with just the news. All the news and none of the noise.
Hey there, welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield and glad you're here with us. The big news right now is up on Capitol Hill. The Senate Judiciary Committee is looking at the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. I'm going to read a little bit of Lindsey Graham to give you a sense of the chairman, what he just said to Amy Coney Barrett. He said, "I think this hearing has been more about Obamacare than about you. Why do many of us object to Obamacare? It was written and passed on a partisan line, I think, on Christmas Eve. Most big changes in society have more buy-in than that. You're talking about 1/5 of the economy. And as I said yesterday, from a South Carolina point of view, this has not worked out well. We started with 5 exchanges. We're down to 1. You have one choice for rural hospitals, have closed, premiums have gone up, not down by an average of 30%. So there is a policy critique from the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman, Lindsey Graham. We're going to get into all of these policy debates right now with a legal expert who also is a healthcare expert, Mr. Bryan Rotella. Welcome, Bryan. Good morning. So, Bryan, I know you love all things lawyer. I can just imagine you watching these hearings, and I would love to be a fly on the wall in your head. But we have you here, and I want to play a clip first from Senator Kamala Harris. She's going after Amy Coney Barrett, specifically on this healthcare issue.
A pandemic that, when age is taken into account, has been 3 times as deadly for Black, Latino, Pacific Islander, and Native Americans. A pandemic that has killed approximately 1 in 1,000 Black Americans, 1 in 1,200 Native Americans, and 1 in 1,500 Latino Americans. Judge Barrett, would you consider the 135 million people who gained protections under the Affordable Care Act when deciding a case that challenges that law?
Senator Harris, if I were to be confirmed and conclude that I was able to sit on the case pursuant to the recusal statute, and then if I heard the case and decided the case, I would consider all the protections that Congress put in place. And as I said earlier during this hearing, the question would be figuring out whether Congress, assuming that the mandate is unconstitutional now, whether that, consistent with your intent, this is Congress's law, would permit this act to stand, or whether the flawed portion of it could just be excised out.
So there you have the charge by Senator Kamala Harris, basically saying that Amy Coney Barrett, if she were to vote against the Affordable Care Act in any way, shape, or form, she would be basically wanting to harm minorities, harm people of color. Do you think this is just posturing? Is this really Senator Harris playing to the cameras, or do you think she's actually going to get anyone to be persuaded by this?
No, I'm going to go deeper. Carrie, this is, from my perspective, the most concerted, collective, coordinated attack or untruth being pushed on the American public since that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. What I mean by that is that everyone's health care is going to blow up on November 10th when there's this hearing in front of the Supreme Court, and if Judge Barrett is on the court. Why? That's not what's in front of the court November 10th. Everybody is failing to look at what happens in our system. We have a tiered system. There was a trial court case in Texas folks have heard about, and it was all about the fact that the Trump tax bill had set the individual mandate at 0. And there was a whole bunch of states saying that means that Obamacare is unconstitutional. Well, that went up to an appellate court, and that's the 5th Circuit Court. Coney Barrett is on the 7th Circuit. So on the 5th Circuit, there's a judge named Jennifer Elrod. She's also on Trump's short list of potential justices. Judge Elrod wrote the opinion in the 5th Circuit, which is going to be what's actually in front of the Supreme Court on November 10th. You know what her decision was? Yeah, the individual mandate's probably unconstitutional now that there's a 0 tax, but my goodness, the trial court needs to do a lot more work. We got to look through 900 pages and determine what was the legislative intent of this tax bill. What are we going to unwind of these 900 pages? This thing needs to have a lot more homework done on it before anything happens. And by the way, Carrie, that decision that the Supreme Court's going to eventually come down with, it's not going to happen on November 10th. It's going to happen June 2021. So what's going on right now with Senator Harris and this, like I said, Democratic collective coordinated attack? They are scaring American people. 130 million people with pre-existing conditions are going to lose their health care. It is completely false. It's not going to happen. This is a tax challenge. That's all that's in front of the Supreme Court on November 10th, is whether that tax, now that it's zero, is constitutional or not.
Well, and that seemed to be what she was getting at in that clip that we just played, which is she said, excising just that little portion of it, the mandate, or as some might call it, the tax, depending on the interpretation, to say that it was a narrow, specific, almost like having a scalpel for a much larger piece of legislation. To your point, that's a very important distinction that seems to be missing when we're hearing this rhetoric from folks on the Senate Judiciary Committee. What about the argument where she says this pre-existing condition? You touched on it. Where is that coming from? Is that being challenged in court legally currently? And also, if you hear Republicans, even the president, he says he supports protections for pre-existing conditions. So where is that coming from? Is it currently being challenged in any circuit?
Yeah, so let me clear it up. This case in Texas that went in front of the district court was brought by a whole bunch of really red states, governors and attorney generals. And yes, they wanted the whole ACA torn up. But as I just mentioned, after this judge agreed with them, it went up to another circuit court. And that's the decision that came down, which is, we think this is unconstitutional, that now that there's a zero tax, but we're not getting into the pre-existings and all the other things that are in Obamacare. Now, what's an important distinction, I haven't heard anyone say this, and it is really bothering me. I think it's to the level of madness, Carrie. And Judge Barrett can't say it because of the Ginsburg rules. This case is going to be in front of her. The Trump administration changed their position when it went up to the circuit court. You know what all the Trump administration is looking for? They want the Supreme Court to find the ACA unconstitutional now, but all they want, the only remedy they want, is two individual plaintiffs who brought this case, two folks in Texas who had to pay the tax to be remedied, meaning that they get a reimbursement for any tax that they paid. And that anybody living in these red states that have brought the lawsuit that got injured, meaning they paid the tax, they get a reimbursement. That is the president's position. For the love of God, I don't know why it's not being said.
Well, so I hear this from a legal standpoint, but as I understand it, the president, and real quick, he has said that he already got rid of that individual mandate as much as he already could using his executive authority. So isn't this already settled by the president?
It is from his executive order, but people are going to say that the executive order is not constitutional. The bigger picture is what the Department of Justice, his Department of Justice, is arguing in front of the Supreme Court. They are not arguing that we should get rid of pre-existing conditions, that we should get rid of age 26 and all the things that people like about Obamacare. They're saying we should remedy these two individuals in the states that have had to pay this tax back when the tax was being enforced before he passed his tax bill. That's all that's going on here. And the Democrats in this concerted attack are using it as a political weapon to try to scare people into voting because their health care is going to disappear.
All right, Bryan, we got to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Bryan Rotella. Stick around. We're going to talk about the stimulus talks next.